Working together to make a better community. We can create a brighter day.
Welcome to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Mantis, and my guests today are Tracey MacKinnon and Paul Berger, both from poverty-free Thunder Bay. Welcome to both of you.
Good morning, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
So, Tracey, tell us a little bit about yourself. Are you a local girl here in Thunder Bay?
I'm not originally from Thunder Bay, but I am originally from Ontario, just southern Ontario. I've been here in Thunder Bay for about 10 years. Before that, I was in Vancouver, then Vancouver Island, and then the East Coast. I've lived on both coasts of Canada. Yeah, roughly 10 years. And all the while I've been here, I've always taken transit. So that's, I guess, where I come from, that lived experience piece.
And you're known really in your work in the community as a community activist around kind of poverty issues and equity issues. Tell us a little bit about that.
I guess most people recognize me by now, if not by my color of my hair, I guess by my drum and my group I hang out with. We do a lot of Indigenous ceremonies and marches and walks and rallies and events. So yeah, I guess we're getting out there, right?
So great. And Paul, give us a little bit about your background as well.
I'm originally from a little town called Newmarket in southern Ontario. I've been here for more than 20 years now, though. I teach at the Faculty of Education at Lakehead University, and I'm a climate change activist in the city with Citizens United for a Sustainable Planet, and a member of and researcher with Poverty Free Thunder Bay as well.
So you're both connected to other kind of community groups in the city, but you're also part of Poverty Free Thunder Bay. Now, just tell us a little bit about Poverty Free Thunder Bay and how that works.
So Poverty Free is just a coalition of interested people and groups who are working to alleviate poverty in the city of Thunder Bay, working at national, provincial, and municipal levels, doing everything we can, involving ourselves in whatever initiative seems to be relevant to make life better and reduce inequity and increase fairness really in Thunder Bay and across the country.
So today we want to hear a little bit more about the initiative that you've been involved with Poverty Free Thunder Bay around transit and around how transit works for the citizens that use it, and kind of a natural experiment that happened here during the pandemic. What happened? What changes happened with transit when the pandemic hit in March?
Well, suddenly from one day to the next, transit it became free to take the bus, and that was for a number of reasons related to the pandemic, but I think especially for safety, so that there wouldn't be people touching money and transferring money and people close to each other for a period of time as they got on the bus. It made all of those things easier. So it was really a natural experiment. And it was very interesting for Poverty Free Thunder Bay because we've been talking for a number of years at Poverty Free and other organizations about what it would mean to have fare free transit. And when we were talking, it seemed like really pie in the sky. Like it seemed like a really big ask, the kind of thing that would be really brilliant for our city, but would be, probably really hard to make happen. And then COVID came along and not only gave us this chance to see what it actually meant to people, but also it showed us that big things can change really quickly, that we can come together and try to protect each other, that we can find money at various levels of government that we never thought was possible before the pandemic, that when we really identify something as an issue and a problem, we can move dramatically. And I think that was really encouraging for us. And suddenly the idea came up, let's actually find out what it meant to people, what it means to people while transit is fare free, and what they think it would mean in the future if that kind of model were to be adopted.
Now Tracey, you said you're a regular transit user. Tell me a little about your experience with transit and how that felt like when the pandemic hit and the changes happened.
I didn't take the bus as much during the pandemic as I had previously for obvious reasons. So it was nice having the free fare, definitely, when I did have to jump on it to go somewhere. Just even, $3 now, $3 one way, $3 another way. That's, $6. That's me, a cup of coffee, a Starbucks coffee. I'm just, loosely relating it to something. But people don't think of it that way. It's a cup of coffee for someone going to work, but yet for someone else on low income or disability or, just below the poverty line, that's $6. That's, that's so significant. You can't put a price on that. It's like, could be to the doctors, could be going to the hospital for a COVID test, right? Could be going to, their nurse practitioner, could be going anywhere for groceries, for the food bank, could be going anywhere. That $3, especially now, well, now that they're charging again, it's so little, but it means so much. There's so many people.
Well, we know, and we've talked about this before on the show, for people that are in that low income category, and especially folks who are only receiving provincial assistance, they have a hard time paying for both rent and food. And so anything on top of that is almost beyond reach. So your example, Tracey, of that, yeah, what's $3? Well, to some folks, it's a lot of money, and it's something that could be happening day after day after day, especially if you've got medical issues and you're going for treatments or therapy. That can be a big deal. So I understand then you undertook a survey of folks in Thunder Bay. Tell us a little bit about that survey.
So 420 people responded to the survey, which is, that's a vast number. It exceeded our expectations. Immediately, people, the responses just flooded in, and the large majority of people, said that it was really important that their lives had been affected positively by not having to pay the fare, and that if the fare-free model were adopted in the future, their lives would also be positively impacted. And what Tracey said was the kinds of things that we heard again and again and again, that people, when they didn't have to pay for the bus, they were able to buy more nutritious food. They were able to move around the city with less stress about whether their ticket would time out. They could go, they didn't have to just walk to the closest grocery store that might not be the least expensive. They could actually go and find things that were on sale at different places. They were in better physical health because they weren't carrying heavy groceries. They were able to do 2 trips for groceries instead of 1 massive trip, or they were able to take the bus instead of walking. So we really were, it did an amazing job of gathering sort of a very broad perspective of exactly what Tracey's talked about, what it's like to suddenly not have to pay that bus fare, and what it would be like for people's health and physical and mental health if we went to a fare-free model instead of asking people to pay that $6, which, as Tracey said, it might not seem like much to in some cases, but it's a huge amount if you're on a fixed income and a low income. And that's what we heard from people again and again.
And so, Tracey, from your experience, your network of folks, and through the survey, what were some of the points that you really saw were the most significant in terms of what people were saying and what their experience was with the free fare?
I know for friends that lived in, say, Kenny Park or Current River, going to Westport or vice versa, then for those who don't take the transit, that's like an hour ride, at least a good hour ride. Then that your transfer expires or you time out. Then you have to pay again, which again goes back to the $6, right? I mean, people who don't use the service don't realize, the transfer is only for an hour. If you're going from one end of the city to the other, that's your hour right there. You have to pay again, especially if it's going for a medical appointment or any kind of appointment. They're not usually on time. And if you miss a connection, or if you miss your bus you wanted, then you have to wait another 15 minutes for the next one. Well, then, if your transfer was close to timing out, it's already timed out. then you have to pay again. I was talking to someone last night who they have the tickets, right? The pack of 10 tickets, and they didn't separate them. So they went to put one in and separate it. So they had to use two because the driver said, well, it didn't register. Like, well, they just lost, at least one ticket. Well, then fix your machines then. Like that's a lot of money for people to be forking out. To only be able to use one.
So it sounds like there's a number of different kind of components of using transit that kind of got dealt with automatically when there was that fare-free time during the pandemic. Did I get that right, Tracey?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with the fare-free system, you won't have to worry about the ticket sticking together or the one, catching and not registering in the box, I guess, the transfer box or the change box. Yeah, so many issues could be alleviated. Less stress on people. Paul said that, right? Less stress, less worry, less, having to run to the bank machine or having to always carry change or always worrying, oh, do I have a ticket? Do I have a spare ticket? It would just help people so much. It would, the ones living in poverty, it would bring them up a little bit more by saving that, $6 a day, or it could be $10 a day or $12 a day, because it is, it's. And with the transfers, it's only good for an hour. You can't even go to the mall or go, to the hospital for a test. Come out for an hour later. So you have to pay again. It's an inefficient system that needs to be changed and overhauled. And I think going cash or fare free would be the perfect way.
And Paul, you're as you mentioned, you're active in kind of environmental protection and climate activist. What's the angle here around transit and climate?
Well, this was a minor part really in our report, and it was mentioned by a number of riders that if we had a fare-free system and a system that was could get you, like Tracey just talked about, it taking an hour to get across town, while in a vehicle it probably takes you 12 minutes for that trip. So we need, as well as fare-free, we need to have better bus routes and more frequent buses. And that will come along with going fare-free, because when you make transit fare-free in every other jurisdiction that it's happened across the world, and there's 100 cities or so that have fully fare-free transit, the ridership goes up. It becomes more efficient. It functions faster because the buses don't need to stop for as long. There are fewer conflicts with drivers over fares. There's all kinds of benefits to this, but one of them is increased ridership, and it does tend to pull people out of cars, and they take public transit. And I think about this back to when I was a university student. I was in a residence building, and I had to pay $5 whenever there was a big party, and they bought kegs of beer. And I didn't drink beer at the time, but I had to learn how to drink beer because I was paying for it anyway, right? So it's like at the party, it was like it was free. And this is what happens for people. People respond to nudges like that. And if we made transit fare free and also worked on improving the routes and the frequency, we would get lots of people that it would become the preferred way to move around the city. And that's really important because the 2019 Transportation Master Plan identifies that only 4% of people commute to work on transit. And it sets a target of moving that, I think, to 8% by 2038. But we need to do much more than that. We also have a community energy and emissions plan coming out soon that will tell us how we're going to get to net zero carbon emissions by the middle of the century. We need to reduce carbon emissions, and public transit is one excellent way to do that. And places like Luxembourg, the whole country has gone fare free. So every train, bus, and tram in Luxembourg for everybody, visitor or resident, is fare free now. And that's because they want to get people out of their cars and into really good public transit. It's a win for everybody when we make transit fare free. It's especially important as a fairness measure for people with lower income, but even people who will still decide not to take transit, it's a win for them because it's good for the environment. It will reduce congestion on the roads, it will reduce maintenance costs on the roads, increase public safety. It's just from every angle you look at this, it makes a lot of sense to do it.
So Tracey, what is the recommendation that Poverty Free is putting forward, and I'm assuming this is going to City Council, or is it the Transit Authority? And have you had any responses yet? What do people think about this?
I think answering your question, Steve, so what we're asking for City Council is to decrease the fare from effective January 1st, 2021 to $2 with every fourth Friday in the month fare free during 2021. The fare would then drop to $1 on January 1st, 2022, every Friday in 2022 fare free. Yeah. And then transit would become fare free as of January 1st, 2023. I think that's our hope, our goal. Yeah. Going fare free, I think, would be, a little bit better.
And Steve, we proposed the phase in like that so that transit can be ready, that transit can see what's happening as the fares drop and as ridership increases, they can be ready for it. And the city budget doesn't get the hit all at once, it steps in over a few years. So this was the reason for the recommendation. And of course, it would be great if city councilors came back and said, well, we want it to be fully fare free on January 1st. And if the transit folks came back and said, we can make that work, we do have a meeting set up with transit. And the timing of this came because of the natural experiment. It wasn't something we planned all in advance. And so, we've moved fairly fast now with this report, and we wanted to get it out at this time. We are looking for city councilors to champion the idea, and we know that there's some interest among city councilors. We also know that some are resistant, as we might have expected, but we're hoping that they will listen to the evidence, that they'll read the report carefully, see what it means to people, and ultimately we'll be able to be courageous and be brave and say Thunder Bay could be on the map for a really amazing reason, as an incredibly progressive place that attracts young people who want to be part of something new and different. I think this is something that's going to happen. We want it to happen now, not in 2050 or 2040 or 2030. But I think it's inevitable that we're going in this direction, and we just need the courage to risk saying, yeah, let's really look at that. Let's really consider it. This would be a huge difference. It would be transformative for our city. Let's give it serious consideration.
So kind of building on what you're talking about, Paul, it seems that there is kind of a demographic shift that, when I grew up, geez, I couldn't wait to get my driver's license. I mean, the day I turned, 16, away we go, let's get that test going. But I see that's different. I see a lot of the kids and now, kids that are the same age as my grandkids are not as quick sometimes to, and may even not even bother getting a driver's license, and see kind of what you're talking about in a little bit, that part of our challenge around the climate issue is our automobiles, and that if you choose not to use automobiles and you stick with public transit, you may be part of that solution. Do we have numbers on that at all, or more information that might help city councilors to be swayed by some of our arguments?
I would say if city councilors read the 2019 Transportation Master Plan, that gives a huge amount of evidence. It's something like 88% of people commute to work by private vehicle, and almost all of those are single people in the private vehicles. Again, city councilors know that climate change is an issue and that we're having to move away from burning fossil fuels. So there's, the Transportation Master Plan also talks about Thunder Bay as an aging community, to maintain mobility for seniors, for people who choose not to drive anymore or aren't able to drive anymore, for youth who don't have their licenses yet or don't have access to vehicles. These are the people who will be the first and biggest beneficiaries of fare-free transit, because their ability to move around will be increased greatly. Their ability to take part in the life of the city will be increased greatly. So I'd say city councilors have a lot of the evidence they need in the transportation master plan, and I think they're going to get more when the community energy and emissions plan is released, because we know where we need to go in terms of carbon emissions. I just think we can see the city with better active transit, with a really good public transit system, with fewer cars, quieter, a shift to electric vehicles and electric bicycles. And it's an exciting future. It's not something to be afraid of. It's something to look forward to. And I think to ask people to get involved in helping encourage people, as I say, to have that passion and the courage to envision something that's different. That's a little bit hard to think of in our current context with budgetary crunches and spending and everything, but something that would benefit not just some people in Thunder Bay, but everybody in Thunder Bay ultimately.
And along those lines, Tracey, we know that to create an inclusive community, there's a number of factors. One certainly is income, but it's not sometimes just about money. It's also about the services and accessing the services that we have. What do you see that could change in Thunder Bay in terms of addressing some of the kind of systemic barriers that we have if we had a free transit here in Thunder Bay?
So all the time you were talking, that just everything that kept popped into my mind, every other word you said was like guaranteed livable income or universal basic income or some kind of guaranteed, that would alleviate a lot, right? I think this is where we were a year ago when you and I and Angie just spoke. The universal basic income would lift those in poverty. They would give them that hand up that they need, and then we wouldn't have this issue with do we have transit free for everybody, and people would have we'd all be on the same level playing field. There wouldn't be those falling through the cracks. There wouldn't be those not being able to afford anything like transit tickets.
And I was just talking to Tom McDowell recently, who did a little evaluation of that basic income pilot, and he talked about the issue of security, to know what your future kind of looks like a little bit better, and your then ability to plan and hope for the future. And I wonder, even like in terms of the issue of transit, if you don't have to worry about having the right change or having the tickets in your pocket and ready to go, does that relieve some of the stress of everyday life, the challenges of making do with not enough, in a way, that you can get to go where you need to go without having to make sure you've got that money in your pocket?
Right, it'd be how do I word this? For those who have vehicles, it'd be like, you always check and make sure you have your driver's license or your credit card, right? I mean, for us who take the transit, we always check and make sure we have our tickets or our, monthly pass if you can afford one. I'll make sure we always have that. That's, you can't leave the house without it, just because that's how we rely on how we get there, place A to place B. It's just, it's something that's always in the back of our mind. It's always something that's we have to think about. It's always something. Climate change is real. Addressing it, I think, with fare free would be like so simple, but yet it's it's such a why are we struggling to push it? It should be like a no-brainer, right?
Imagine this, Steve. Imagine you get a call and there's an extra shift at work, and they ask if you want to take the shift, and you think, well, I don't have the bus fare with me. I'm gonna have to go to the ATM to get money. Then I'm gonna have to go to a store to get it changed, so I don't have to pay $20 for my ride. I can't do that and get across town in time to take the shift, so I've lost the shift. We heard that in the survey. We heard from people that if it was fare free, they might go downtown to have a drink, and they take transit, and they wouldn't have to worry about whether they're driving or not. Or they might take their bike someplace and not worry about getting a flat or being too tired to ride home, because they could take the bus home. This is this increase in mobility, this mobility that many people take for granted, is extremely important to taking part in city life. If you think of $6 as a round trip, $3 there, $3 back to an appointment, that doesn't sound like a lot of money to you. Well, we did a little calculation, and it's in our report there, that if you were paying relative to your income, and you were paying relative to somebody on a ODSP, then a police officer for that trip would pay $49 to get there and to get back. Or the college president would pay $97, or the city manager would pay $115. The CEO of the Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Center would be paying over $100, $175 for that bus trip. So this is an equity issue. It's saying to some people that they can't be mobile in the city it's just not fair. It's not good for any of us. And imagine if we had tolls on sidewalks, and we said you can't walk around on the sidewalks without paying tolls to get places. Well, that's absurd, isn't it? Nobody would think that made any sense. But that's actually what we're doing when we say that a bus is just like a faster sidewalk, right? It's just like speeding the sidewalk up a bit by having a bus. And by making people pay to get on that bus, it's just the same as having people pay to walk down the sidewalk. And I'd like listeners to think of it like that, like shift thinking and think of public transit as a public good, the same way as libraries are, and education is, and healthcare is. We don't ask people to pay. We don't have toll roads in Thunder Bay. We don't get them to pay to go out on when they're driving their cars. We shouldn't have people paying when they're getting on the bus.
Tracey and Paul, we're just about out of time. Thank you so much. Now, if people want to see a copy of the report, how can they see that? Where can they find it?
They can mail the Poverty Free Thunder Bay website, which I think you guys can flash up on the screen maybe. If they'd like to talk to me about the report, it's paul.berger@lakeheadu.ca. And we'd be really happy to have that kind of interaction, because we do need public support, and we need the support of organizations. We're in the process of gathering that now. And stay tuned, everybody. We're going to make transit in Thunder Bay fare-free in our lifetimes. We're not going to wait until 2050.
Well, great. Thank you so much, both of you. Sure appreciate, and I'd really like to be kept informed of how this goes forward, and good luck with this initiative.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks very much, Steve.
And to all our viewers out there, please stay safe, and we're going to get through this pandemic, and hopefully we're going to come out the other side with a little bit better society and community, and one that's more inclusive. All right, stay safe. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Working together to make a better community. We can create a brighter day.